Alrighty then. Good evenings, people. Welcome to a Kingdom Rush review. And today I'm gonna be talking about the new update that is coming to Vengeance, and that'll be the Rise of the Dragon. Much like any other Vengeance Elite stages, it has like 3 campaigns, and it's kind of one of the most surprising updates because normally Origins and Frontiers ended with only like 3 elite campaigns, while Vengeance ended with 4, making it kinda like Kingdom Rush 1, except there it doesn't have nearly as much and but has much longer like campaign levels, and it also has the most amount of levels of any Kingdom Rush game, which is a really good thing. And I'm gonna be honest, I've tried this out on beta and I actually really love this update. I mean, or this stage, because it's kind of like my favorite or second favorite Vengeance Elite campaigns. I mean, it wasn't as frustrating or, well, it wasn't. I mean, I like the Frozen Throne as much, but Rise of the Dragon is kind of like the sandboxy thing. It's much easier than the other 3 Elite campaigns, even easier than Frozen Throne in Vengeance. But at the same time, it kind of feels like fair, because Vengeance already has like 2 uh, elite campaigns that some people did not enjoy, like the frog stage and of course, the disappointing Halloween stage. Come on now, why not vampire hunters instead of those skeletons or something? But anyways, about this uh levels, it's, I could say, I don't remember all of them. This is recorded like days before, but in a brief overview, I could say that I will talk about the towers, then I'll talk about the hero, then the enemy, and other stuff. And I could honestly say I really do love this update. I could make other reviews of other Kingdom Rush updates and what I think about it. I'm I may have started I may have started to become a little bit like a Kingdom Rush YouTuber, but let's see how it goes. So anyways, let's start with the new tower, the Shaolin monks. Alright, the Shaolin Tower. It's a new tower coming for the new update, and out of all of the Elite Campaign towers, which is the Deep Devil's Reef and Swamp Thing, and this, I have to say, this is my favorite Vengeance Tower. Or my favorite tower that was introduced. And it's also one of my favorite Vengeance Tower, and I'll explain why. First of all, it's an archer tower. It briefly stuns enemies, much like Orc Shaman or Melting Furnace. But what makes it special is that it has a pretty decent average attack speed, almost as much as a level 1 archer from Kingdom Rush 1 to Frontiers. It does very low damage, which doesn't make it as nearly good of a damage dealer, but what makes it really good is that it constantly stuns enemies, and this could, even at lower levels, it can be really good slowing down enemies if you just spam it across the stage. especially on an oatmeal farm, and it's kind of like the better goblin ranks, except that goblin ranks uh, may sound bad since this tower is released now, but I'll talk about goblin ranks later. And it also has like the upgrades. I mean, at level 4 it does like 60 to 24 damage, which is very low. But it makes up with abilities as well. First off, we have the giant monk. So this is the giant monk, and he has like 520 health, which is fairly high, and does like 40 to 60 damage per 1 second, making it do as much damage as a barbarian with more axes. And it's basically a unit. It costs the same amount as a gargoyle, except there's only just one unit of it. And it's a really good damage dealer and a staller. Makes up the low damage of the Shaolin Tower's DPS. It could be also considered like good for Shaolin challenge only, and that's really about it. It's also incredibly bulky, so it can take a few hits or so, and the Shaolins by themselves can also help it survive a little bit longer if placed properly. And it's a really nice cash or money to buy for it. And speaking of the second ability, I'm gonna be talking about the gold thing, the gold upgrade that I don't remember. So this is the gold upgrade. I don't remember the names. I'm just making a little bit of a quick review before the update is released. But what this thing does is that it gives you like 10% more gold, which is one of the issue Vengeance has, is that certain especially enemies in the main campaign, is that they didn't give much gold. This one fixes a little bit. It's not exactly the most overpowered, but it's a really nice thing. You get cash a little bit quicker, and it's really helpful ability. It's also incredibly cheap, like 85 gold. I don't remember the full. I only remembered when I tested the game, and it is another good ability, much like the monk. However, I can't really say about the third ability. Now, the third ability is this like extra unit of things, and all it does is like increase its attack speed, or increase so that it can attack multiple targets, kind of like artillery. And well, it does sound pretty good. It's very expensive, and with a little bit of the Vengeance upgrade tree, it costs around 297, which is kind of too much, almost as much as Rocket Rider's mines, and it's not really worth it. But I'm not exactly sure if it increases more units to block more, constantly stun more targets, but I really don't think it's worth it, because Shaolin on its own can already stun one target pretty well, and it can stun few groups of enemies, but you really only use it for slowing down enemies like the high sorcerers or other forms of enemies. And while it could be considered good in challenges, I'm not sure about it. It could it could be its worst ability. So overall, I can say that Shaolin Temple is a really good stun tower. You can use it. You can finally use a fifth stun tower to basically create this stun loadout with Orc Shaman, Melting Furnace, um, Swamp Thing, and the Goblin ranks. And speaking of a stun tower, let's talk about the stun hero or a dragon that you might know as Jung Yoon. And I'm gonna be showing Jung Yoon what it does. Jung Yoon, he's basically a paid tower hero, and I'm not sure how much he costs, but he's another like flying dragon. If you don't like dragon, you might not like him, but unlike Merklin, Parasite, or Ice God, this hero doesn't do much damage. He does like 27 to 41, which is very very low. He has decent health. He moves very slowly. But the interesting thing about him is that if an enemy dies near him, he gives gold. Another thing what makes him unique is that he can stun enemies briefly, kinda like a mini Orc Shaman or the mini Shaolin. And what makes him, he's very more of a support tower than kinda like uh kinda like the Tinkerbell uh or oh yeah, Kata. He's kinda like Kata, except that he heals, does something, and stuns constantly enemies. So keep in mind you should use like DPS tower if you want to use him effectively, but he can also work well with the stun loadout. Keep in mind, stun loadouts do not work against enemies that you can't block, like ghosts or the new dragon enemy or the frozen souls or something. So I'm gonna be briefly talking about the abilities for him. Alright, first off is Lightning Strike. Now, what it does is that it bounces on enemies, kinda like mini Tesla or something. I don't exactly remember what it does, but it's exactly pretty okay ability. It doesn't do much damage, but it's alright of an ability, not a great. Moving on to the next ability, we have. Next up is Stormlord. What it does is that it increases number of lightning, kinda like the Shaolin's upgrade, except better because you have a hero. It doesn't cost gold, just points. What this does is that it makes Jung Yoon stun more enemies, which is a really nice thing, and which makes so that he can slow down enemies even further, which is a really nice ability. And moving on to the third ability, we have electric cloud. Uh, this ability heals like 120 at max, which isn't really great, especially if you compare it to Junpei's healing ability, which is good for, which is really good for the knights and the orcs. But this ability alone is only really good for uh, the zombies and orcs, which is alright of an ability. It doesn't heal much, but I could say it's an alright ability, even if it's a little bit weak. I mean, it could be considered pretty somewhat strong if used with more knights or more knights challenges. I don't know how to say it. It's not that great either, but it's an alright healing ability. Better than Orc Shaman's heal ability. And finally, we have the fourth ability, which is Supreme Wave. Okay, Supreme Wave is kind of like the. It's kind of like how. Okay, what was his name again? It's kind of like Doomtank's ability, which is also kind of like another Junpei's ability. It stuns enemies and it's a little bit range or something. Not that great either, but pretty alright of an ability. And let's move finally to the hero spell, which I think is very, very unique, which is a Son of Thunder and Lightning. This hero spell is kind of similar to Origins or Frontiers, like this almost mine-like ability. What it does is that it puts a dragon or that shoots magic arrows. I think it's 5, but what's the nicest thing is you can infinitely use it. If you speed it up, you could actually lay down like 20 or 30 dragons, which is really good if you want to plan ahead and use it as example against the high sorcerer. I mean, if it goes like to the exit where it wants to go, all of these dragons will shoot like, you could stack up like hundreds, thousands of dragons, and it would kill the golem. Like, it would take out golem pretty well, and it's especially good on stages where enemies rarely come, like in Light Seekers level, where at the far bottom enemies will, like the high sorcerers will go. You could actually use this ability to its advantage. Pretty nice ability. Overall, I could say Jung Yoon is a decent hero. He's not the best dragon hero, not even the best flying hero in the series, but I honestly like him more than I like Barasad. Barasad is kinda boring compared to this hero, but even then he's not exactly great. I mean, he could be considered average. And aside from that, if you want to use this hero, go for it. And after talking about it, I could now talk about the enemies right now, which I'm gonna be focusing on. I don't remember the exact name of these enemies, but I know what their ability does. So let's get to the first enemy that you will encounter. Alright, first of all, there is Kremlings, which I remember are called Tao Oing or something. And if you've seen the trailer, you know what they're doing. Like, if they go contact with water, they would duplicate. Now, Biden says they don't have much health, like 50 or maybe even less, and they do pretty decent alright damage, 8 to 12. They're considered like the weaker enemies, weaker than the recruits or stick soldiers. And but what keeps them a little bit threatening is that if they go on water, they will duplicate themselves. And what you want to do is actually use. You could either camp them, which they can come in huge numbers later on, or you could use an artillery tower. Finally, an artillery tower that is really, really useful this time. And trying to kill their groups as much as possible. They don't have much health. Anyway, so either camp them or use artillery if you're lazy. They're not the most difficult enemies. They don't have any form of armor or magic resistance. But they're one of the most fun enemies to deal with. Not too annoying. And I honestly love these Chinese mythological enemies for the Kingdom Rush games. And speaking of another water enemy, let's talk about these water dogs. Alright, so these are the water dogs. They have like 600 health or something, maybe 560 on casual difficulty. I don't exactly remember. They do like 32, 42 damage, which is very high. They have low magic resistance, 30 or 25. They're kind of like what Corrosive Souls and the Ice Reapers are, like bulky fast enemies introduced. And what makes them unique is that if they get contacted with water, they will heal themselves. So you gotta keep them out of the water. It's very useful to use bulky heroes or bulky barracks. You could even use like mausoleums, gargoyles. However, don't use possession against them. It's because if they go near water, they can heal themselves and just stall infinitely, unless there are multiple of them. But this is the only situation where teleport or possession is liability against these enemies. Especially if you're near water, because you want to keep them inland as much as possible, which kind of gives it a good strategy. I'm not sure if you're gonna test if they can outlast the DPS output of any towers, but I want to see them try. They heal fairly well in water, which is a really nice touch. And unique for a new enemy. And finally, I'm gonna be talking about their third ability, which is the dragon thing, or guys dressing up as a dragon. I think those are stick soldiers. Alright, finally is the stuffed dragon. And these are kinda like bulky ghosts with no armor or magic resistance. And they basically serve as more of a line enemies than anything else. Artillery and specific goblin ranks are especially useful for to handle these things. If you place goblin ranks right, they can handle these lines pretty effectively. And as for artillery, you could use Zeppelin or the rocket riders. Finally, useful for the rocket riders. These are the type of enemies you can't attack with barracks, blocked by barracks, unless with shadow archers. You can't even use the swamp thing unless there's an enemy near it, which kind of rarely happened. But you could but as an enemy on its own, it's well, the difficulty most likely comes from the down of their bulk more than actually doing anything. But overall, the strategy you need is either goblin ranks, high DPS artillery with high DPS, or you could also use shadow archers to handle these things, which is a really nice thing. And finally, I'm gonna be talking about the boss of this update. Alright, finally I got the Dragon King. He has same amount of bulk as Geralt, and I kinda hate to say it to you, but he's actually one of those. He's kinda like the ancient ghost. He can't attack, but he can shoot water randomly on the map, which makes him somewhat challenging. All you need is high DPS towers to hit it. He teleports randomly. I actually almost lost a life on impossible by using my favorite loadout with favorite towers with Ice Cult, but in all honesty, he serves more like a support boss, kinda like what Jung Yoon is as an opposite. He doesn't attack any units or melee heroes. He just kinda stands there. He's quite honestly pretty disappointing boss. But overall, he is alright. Oh, and I forgot one thing to mention about the pot. The pot is kinda like it's kinda like the crystal thing, or the crystal thing in the haunted level, or the invulnerability in frog level. But what makes this different is that it insta-kills any nearby enemies, no matter the health, which can be really helpful against the high sorcerers or the stuffed dragons. And it's nothing special. You have to use it wisely, because you shouldn't spend on smaller enemies against it unless if there's too many of them. It's an alright thing, or environmental thing, I guess. So so that's about it really with the pot. Finally, as of right now, there could be some changes with the enemies. There could be some changes with the tower. There could be changes to the hero, but as of right now, I really love this update. I love it more than the frog or the haunted level, and it's like my second favorite vengeance elite campaigns. Maybe even one of my favorite elite campaigns update, because it introduced it introduced quite a lot of it introduced kind of unique enemies and a really good cool tower with a really good concept. I always love newer unique tower that aren't like copy pasted like Bertha clones or musketeers. I'm looking at you, Weirdwood, Rocket Rider, Swamp Thing, and Golden Archer. Um, it doesn't have exactly the best hero introduced, and the boss is still kind of like as same as Ancient Ghost and the Dragon boss from Frost level. But I'm not sure what the community thinks about it. But I could either see some people liking it or others finding it too easy. But I don't mind about it. So let's see about it. So anyways, thanks for watching my review, and I'll see you next time. See ya.